Jeff, Kim wants to go ahead and start. Well, good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for joining us. I'm Brian Francis. I'm the Director of Advocacy for the Chamber of Catawba County, and welcome you to a kind of a special event of our Advocacy at Work program. We're very fortunate today to have the Speaker of the North Carolina House, Representative Tim Moore, Speaker Tim Moore, with us today. As you may imagine, his schedule is quite hectic and quite fluid. So we appreciate all of you who have signed on a little bit early today so that we could maximize the amount of time that we get to spend with Speaker Moore. I'm actually going to turn it over to Representative Jay Adams to make the official introduction of the speaker. I feel like I don't really need to introduce him. Obviously, I think you all know him. You've sent him to Raleigh 4 times now, and prior to that, he may have been involved with the Chamber of Commerce a little bit. A long history working with the Chamber. So without further ado, Representative Adams, if you'd like to introduce the speaker.
Well, it's with great pleasure that I introduce Speaker Tim Moore. Tim has been, he's done an incredible job. I'd just like for people to understand it. Tim has his district too, District 111 down in Cleveland County. So he's responsible to 82,000 people just as I am, but he has a great deal number of requirements of his time. And, you know, he has been speaker now since I was there and longer. He's been in the House of Representatives for 20 years, which is really, that's an impressive thing to accomplish in itself. But to be speaker and to be able to deal with the issues that he has to deal with, I mean, with such finesse and with such grace, and he works across both sides of the aisle. It's been a real pleasure to work under his leadership. He's a graduate. I'll just say he's a graduate of UNC Chapel Hill. And in spite of that, he's a very conservative fella. And I would like to also point this out. I don't think many people realize this, but Tim's political career actually began in Catawba County, if I'm not mistaken. He was working on a local congressman's campaign back in the 1980s. Am I correct, Tim?
I did. I helped with Cass Ballinger's election way back long ago. Yeah.
That's right. That's right. Tommy Luckadoo, I believe, recruited you into that campaign. So that's another special connection he has with Catawba County. It's with great pleasure I introduce Speaker Tim Moore.
Well, thank you, Jay. I appreciate it. And I'll tell you that Catawba County is very lucky to have Jay Adams as one of your representatives. He is. He's a very hard worker. He knows a ton about all kinds of issues. Of course, with his background in real estate, he really has a great command of things that we need to do from a business perspective. Of course, as an avid outdoorsman, he's also a key part of our leadership when it comes to wildlife and outdoor issues. So he does great work. Of course, and Mitchell Setzer does a great job as well, representing Catawba County and his family and their business. Of course, he understands too what it means to sign the front side of a paycheck. So you are very well represented in the House as well as in the Senate. I mean, you get all A pluses all the way across. Glad to be a part of this today with just sort of a brief update of where we are. This year we have broken the record for the longest session of the North Carolina General Assembly in the history of the state. That was not something that I wanted to see us, a record I wanted to see us break, but that's where it is. We actually are out of session right now, but we do come back on December 30th. And although I expect we probably will be back in actual session sometime around the first week of January. Right now, what's happening, there's litigation ongoing concerning the congressional, House, and state Senate districts. So that's having to work its way through the courts, and the General Assembly may have to weigh in at certain times on different issues, and we'll deal with that as we get to it. But those are the things that are presently happening. But this has really been a very good session. We passed a historic budget this year, a budget that has a record amount of investment in infrastructure from one end of the state to the other. We'll be putting more money than in the history of the state in infrastructure such as roads, bridges, rail, ports, airports, buildings, our university campuses, community college, K-12, investing a record amount like water and sewer and broadband. And a lot of that we used the one-time federal money to do it. And then a lot of it we used what's called our SCIF funds, or our state capital infrastructure funds, where we have basically created a plan where the state doesn't have to go into debt through bonding and can actually put these funds out and deploy these dollars 100% lead on target for projects. So very proud of that we've done that this year during what has otherwise really been a very challenging time. At the same time, while we have some spending there, we're not expanding a lot of entitlement programs or anything like that. Matter of fact, we've been very clear to not do anything to incentivize folks staying home versus going back to work. We've seen what the federal government is doing, where some of the policies that are happening there really are having a pretty rough impact in terms of getting folks back into the workforce, and that's just creating havoc through the broader economy. And I'm sure those of you on the call, particularly those who own businesses, are probably sensing that as well, having challenges and having workers. But at the same time, while we've done that, we've also had an opportunity to invest those one-time dollars and one-time expenses. Because we've had such a strong economy, because we've had such growth, we are one of the fastest growing states in the country now. We actually were able to lower taxes. So the tax rates right now in North Carolina is a 5.25% personal income tax. That's going to taper out over a period of years down to 3.9%. The corporate income tax is going to go to 0, and we've also eliminated most of what's called the franchise tax. So those are going to be things that are going to really help the average working family, businesses, basically top to bottom. We increased the what's called the standard deduction, which is the amount of money that folks can earn without paying any tax. That really particularly helps those who earn the least. And something that I know is very important to a lot of business owners, we made the Paycheck Protection Program loans tax forgivable as well in North Carolina's income tax. There was a little bit of a battle on that, but eventually our position carried the day, and very pleased that happened. And I think that's something that's going to help a lot of businesses that really have taken it on the chin due to COVID and then some of these related fallout issues thereafter. In our region of the state, you will see a lot of investment in education as well. By the way, we raised teacher pay, other state employee pay. We put money into where schools could use for more capital and infrastructure. And so in Western North Carolina, if you look at a lot of the projects, if you look at Catawba County, a lot of the projects that Jay and his colleagues and the House and as well as the Senate brought back to the district, a lot of money there, a lot of money being put into improving the roads. I mean, it just was really a very solid budget for our region. A lot of money for water and sewer. We know that local towns and counties have difficulty expanding and being able to locate industry or locate new housing because of not having access to sewer or water. So these new grants and these new direct appropriations are going to make a huge difference on that. Something that's real big. I'm just down the road from you in Cleveland County, where there's more of you in Catawba than in Cleveland. But if you think about it, our communities are very similar. If you look at the history of textiles, you look at kind of the, a lot of the demographics of my home county, Cleveland, Gaston, Lincoln, Catawba. I mean, our region is it's very similar in a lot of ways. One of the things I've been very proud of, and Jay has been a strong supporter of as well, is make sure we protect and expand what's called the historic tax credit, that and the mill tax credit. And then we also have the one for old schools. And what we did was we recognized that a lot of facilities and a lot of downtown, like small towns, I mean, our area, right? I mean, this is a prime example where, when the malls were built back in the 70s, the downtown started struggling, people left, and they just kind of limped along. Now the interest is in trying to come back and rehab those buildings and bring those downtowns back to life. And you guys are doing a great job of that. We're seeing that all in our region. That historic tax credit is absolutely crucial and essential to see that we do that, because it makes up for the cost difference of going in and rehabbing older buildings to do that. Same with a lot of old mills. We don't have as many textile factories or furniture factories as we did at one time. Finding a way to go back in and repurpose those buildings, those brownfield sites. We've put very generous tax treatment in for those, so that we turn around and get those things, those kinds of properties back doing well. Jay, what's the name of the facility where we've had some events before that was a mill at one time?
That was the Moretz Mill.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely incredible. That place is an absolute show place. And you start seeing that replicated all over the state with this. You now see them where, of course, more of them now are being converted to apartment living, and there's a huge demand for these things. I mean, and just the best example I can think of recently is in Hall River, which is over in Alamance County. If you're ever passing that way at I-40, you need to jump off and go see it. These were just mills that had been vacant for decades. They were an eyesore. It was bad. Developers went in there using the historic tax credit and the mill tax credit and have rehabbed these things, and they are just unbelievable. They have the historic nature. They're incredible. And there's these huge wait lists for all these things. So there's a market for it, but you need those tax credits to make it work. On the road side, I remember vividly that in our region of the state, it seemed like we were often left behind when it came to road improvements. You could go to other parts of the state and see nice interstate roads going nowhere. You come to the West, and there were some who, I used to always say when I first got to Raleigh that I had to tell some of my members that the state line didn't end at I-77, right? That actually there was another part of us, right, that lived west of Interstate 77. And we said that sort of jokingly, but at the same time, if you looked at where in the past a lot of the appropriations were going, or rather not going around the state, our region was left out a lot. One of the things that ever since our side of the aisle took the majority in 2010 that we've done is to make sure that funding has been equitable around the state. And as a result, the western part of North Carolina has finally started seeing its appropriate amount of investment in road funding and other projects. And so that you'll see that continue. Some of the growing pains are is that we have to sit in construction sometimes while that happens. But clearly in Catawba County, 321 is still a very choked corridor right now, trying to get north. That needs help. I-40 is going to need continued improvements as well. So these are all symptoms of a lot of growth that our region's having, and we need to make sure that we're keeping up with that as well. A couple of other things. We invested a lot of money into workforce training. Now, you can attract all the new industry that you want to attract, but if you don't have a solid and educated workforce to fill those positions, it's not going to sustain. And we've put a record amount of money into our community colleges to make sure that either folks newly entering the workforce or folks perhaps transitioning will have access to those opportunities, whether it's advanced manufacturing training, whether it's in the nursing field and medical field, where we have tremendous shortages, to acquire that knowledge and those skills to be able to continue to be able to develop that workforce that's going to be needed not only now, but years in the future. So we're very proud of that as well. So it is, it's been a great budget year. It's been pretty solid. We've passed a lot of other good policy, but overall, I'd have to say it's been a long session. We've been here a lot longer than we want to. When I come in and I see all the Christmas wreaths and the garland and the Christmas trees, it's really pretty. It's really nice. But man, I wish I was back in Kings Mountain when I'm seeing all that. But we're here, and while my members like Representative Adams and others are back home and enjoying their family and doing a lot of things, I still have to sometimes be here, because part of being Speaker of the House is we have several hundred staff that I guess you'd say are under our control and our supervision. So like anything else, any business, we get to deal with all the personnel issues and all those kinds of matters. It's all kinds of stuff that when you take this job that you sign up for, that they don't have it on the sheet when you take this gig. But it's an honor to have it, and it's certainly an honor to represent Western North Carolina. And with that, I'm glad to take any questions on any issues, any topics whatsoever.
Thank you, Speaker Moore, and thank you for your perseverance in getting a budget done this year. Obviously, it was not easy. I will admit I was at times skeptical that you all were going to be able to accomplish it, but it was really important. And as you do things for the short term, such as PPP deductibility, to the long-term impact of cutting those rates on small and corporate businesses are going to be great for the state. I wonder, I'll kick things off, if you wouldn't mind giving us a little preview for next year's short session. I know it's going to be maybe even shorter than usual with the primaries getting pushed back. What can we expect to see, or should we expect to see anything during the short session?
Well, so we're going to roll right into next year, right in session. That's the first time that I know of that ever happening in the history of our state. So normally we would have adjourned in July and we would be looking at coming back and say April or May. Didn't quite pan out that way. Although by being here and just keeping our nose to the grindstone, we did get the budget done, and it did take that persistence. It took that pressure to make sure that we'd be in a position where the governor would either sign the budget, which he did, or that we would carry through with the veto override. As far as next year, I would imagine you could anticipate that we will build on the investments and spending that we've done in the first year of the biennium. The tax policy is already in place, so there'll be no need to have to deal with that. And so there's not a lot of things that we have to do in the short session. We really took most of the heavy lifting out or accomplished that this first year of the 2-year session. So there won't be that much that we have to do. We know there'll be additional federal money that has to be dispersed, the infrastructure funds, the additional ARPA funds that are there. And we'll probably have to make tweaks to the budget. But I would anticipate during the early part of session next year, maybe responding to court litigation, as well as dealing with the other part of redistricting. We do have a few issues that are still hanging around that didn't get resolved this year, and we'll deal with those in due course as well.
Great, thank you. I do want to welcome those who have joined us. If you did not see, we had to start a little earlier in order to get the most out of our time with the speaker. But at this point, I'd be happy to open it up to those on the call if anyone has any questions.
Speaker, this is Mary Furtado with Catawba County. Thank you for being with us. Understanding that NCDOT has run into some trouble funding the Strategic Transportation Improvement Program. Just curious as to whether the federal appropriations might be coming into play to help shore that up. In Catawba County, 2 key projects for us that have been moved from the funded list into the list of those that are kind of hanging in the balance are a widening of Startown Road past our Trivium Corporate Center and the widening of Highway 150 down in the Sherrills Ford area. So I was just curious as to your perspective on that.
So those are still being worked through. We're expecting a tremendous amount of infrastructure money. There's money that we've also shifted over to even help bolster the funds through DOT. And so I think that I feel really good that those things are going to be addressed, but they're working through that. And I think really what has caused a lot of the issue was the fact that the increased cost in everything that you're dealing with. And so everything from the raw materials needed to build roads and do that, as well as the personnel cost. I mean, this inflation is a real thing, and it has significantly impacted the cost. I mean, you look at projects that where the estimates came in a certain amount now, I forget what the percentage is, but it's a huge increase over what it was estimated. That's a lot of what's going on right now.
All right. Thank you for that. I'd just like to kind of just go out there and say for Catawba County, those 2 projects in particular are so important in helping us continue the economic growth that we've been fortunate enough to be having.
Yes, ma'am.
Speaker, we thoroughly appreciate your time. Do you have time for one more question?
Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead.
We have one more question for the speaker.
Well, I'm just going to jump in here if you don't mind.
Please do.
One of the other road projects that it's going to hit us really hard is Highway 321. And now we have the Appalachian State remote campus that's going to occupy the Corning old headquarters building, which is on the west side of 321. And presently, we don't have a provision for a direct east-west connector across 321. It's slated to be 6-lane super street. And we're going to have to deal with that. And we'll wait and see what, how we approach that. But that's going to have a huge impact on our area.
Speaker, we thoroughly appreciate your time. We know that your schedule is busy today, and so we thank you. We hope you'll come back to see us at the Catawba Chamber again real soon, and wish you the best of luck in continuing to lead the state and continuing to do what our businesses need from us.
Well, thank you. I was actually in Catawba County last night when I drove up. I drove up Highway 18 to 10 over to, I guess, at 127 to 321 to I-40. So there you go. So that's the way sometimes I come from, depending on where I am in the county, to come to Raleigh. So I'm actually in Catawba County all the time. I don't, a lot of times I don't announce it, because if I do, I get stuck buying either lunch or dinner for Jay. And so it can become a really expensive trip. So sometimes I kind of have to not ask, I'd have to sort of slip through under the wire and folks not know it. But no, actually I'm in Catawba County. Matter of fact, I've been in this week already. I've been in Catawba County on 2 separate occasions, one going through and then one when I was headed up, and I had a meeting in Lenoir. And then I had a brief stop down in Hickory as well. So I'm by there all the way. I'm practically a neighbor, and I just really appreciate the chance to work with you. And I can't say enough about your legislative delegation in the House and the Senate. You have incredible members who really and truly care about your community. So you're very fortunate those members continue to serve. And thank you all for everything. And just say God bless and Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas to you too, and feel free to stop by for lunch or leave some sales tax dollars in Catawba and on any of those trips back and forth.
Will do. Thanks, y'all. Take care.
Thank you.
Merry Christmas.
For everybody else, if you're willing to stay on, we'd like to continue this conversation. Representative Adams will be here with us to answer any additional questions that you might have about what the General Assembly has done. And Representative Adams, I'd love to kick it off with talking a little bit more about some of that investment in Catawba County that we saw in the budget. Do you want to talk about some of the specific items that were in there?
Well, one of the Dean Proctor got a large appropriation for vocational education. That's going to be kind of a clean sheet of paper that we're going to work from to locate a site and that will serve basically an 8-county area. That's a big project for us. And he's got $15 million for the project, plus additionally about $9 million for water and sewer if necessary to supply the site. We got $9 million for the expansion of the Manufacturing Solutions Center last year, and that facility should be completed, I think, in April. And the last time I checked, it was ahead of schedule and under budget, which is quite remarkable, and that speaks to the leadership that we have in Conover and in the county. I mentioned the 321 project and the impact that the Appalachian State Remote Campus is going to have on that thoroughfare. And I don't think that can be underestimated. They have purchased a 226,000 square foot building, which could house multiple curriculums. It will be the largest building that Appalachian owns. And, what it leads to is hard to grasp. I went to University of North Carolina at Charlotte in 1970. I don't even know if I could find the buildings that I attended classes in anymore. That campus has exploded. And we have to consider what the impact will be over the next few decades. It's going to be tremendous. The other thing I would, just thinking back, one of the things that we talked about when I was involved with the chamber many years ago was the one missing ingredient for our area was a state level university. We've got it now. And we've got a private university as well. So it's going to be transformative to our community and to our area. I think another thing I'd like to point out is that Hickory is in the far northwest corner of the county. And our neighbors in Caldwell, Burke County, and Alexander County are going to be very important to us going forward. So, and we've got terrific relationships there. Dustin Hall's in Caldwell County. Hugh Blackwell is in Burke County. We have a great relationship with these folks to jointly craft our future, and we can't underestimate the value of working together with them. We've talked about that for decades, and now we have a real opportunity to capitalize on those assets. But I'll take any questions and I'll try to answer them. not as good as the speaker.
Questions do we have for Representative Adams? So I'll go ahead and get the ball rolling based on a conversation we had at a recent committee meeting. We were starting to look ahead at issues. And one thing that is really impacting businesses right now is supply chain issues. To be honest, this is one of those problems that I'm not sure we necessarily know what the solution is, but just wanted to raise that as an issue and see if you're hearing that from your colleagues around the state and what policy issues you think maybe we should look at in order to address those supply chain issues.
Absolutely. We were talking about the impact of the pandemic and the impact of the policies that the state implemented on supply chains in May of 20. So we understand that. In a manufacturing town, if you're in the furniture industry and you realize that, well, we got a perfect example of it last year when the winter storm hit Texas and we didn't have foam to make upholstered furniture with. That was a huge impact. It simply stopped them in their tracks. Well, likewise, in the boating industry, we knew that there were boat manufacturers who couldn't get windshields for their boats. You can have a complete boat, but if it doesn't have a windshield, you're not going to be able to ship it. So I think one of the things that we've learned to understand is that there's not just one supply chain. There are basically an infinite number of supply chains, and when they work well, it's fantastic. You reduce cost, you create better products because the individual elements of the final product are made very specifically and to high quality. But when you have a disruption, it has great trauma. And one of the things that I brought up early on was if you close one restaurant, the supply chains can handle it. It's no big deal, even 10 restaurants. But when you shut down all the restaurants in the state, you basically disrupt those supply chains, and it takes a long time to recover. And we were talking about what the policies, what impact they would have early on. But we passed bills to try to understand these impacts, but they were vetoed. So supply chains are very important. I think going forward, the public may have a better grasp of what we're talking about when we talk about shutting down businesses and the impacts that they have. We had farmers that were burying, chickens and turkeys and hogs because they had no one to sell them to. We had a commercial fishing industry that was at an absolute standstill. So I think the public is now going to have a better grasp of the impact, the collateral impact of policies going forward. And perhaps we'll make better decisions as a result.
What other questions do we have? I think maybe you've answered them all, Representative.
Oh, there.
Well, again, for those who joined us maybe mid-call, we thank you for your flexibility. The speaker had some commitments shift for him this afternoon, and so we got started a little bit early to try to maximize our time with him. For those who maybe I have not yet met, my name is Brian Francis. I'm serving as the Advocacy Director for the Chamber of Catawba County. And this call was kind of a special event of our Advocacy at Work program. At this point, I'm going to turn it back to Lindsay to kind of wrap us up and share a little bit more about what we're doing.
Thank you, Brian. Representative Adams, thank you so much for joining us today. It's not often that I get to say that we have a state delegation that started with their involvement through this organization. You guys you're pro-business through and through, and we're so grateful for your partnership and your support in Raleigh and just representing us, this region well. If you haven't had a chance to meet Brian, you certainly did today, at least virtually. We hope we're going to be convening in person in the coming months and creating a plan for our Advocacy at Work for 2022. But what a great addition Brian has been to our team as Advocacy Director. I want to commend our board of directors for their investment in ensuring we have someone that's working full-time to follow our legislative priorities and help guide us and advise us in ensuring that we're the lead advocate for business needs and issues and concerns in this area. So I want to thank him for his contribution to our team and for adding value to all of our shareholders and investors in this county. I want to tell you that we are our legislative task force, which, by the way, I saw John Teeter log on. John Teeter, I want to recognize him for his leadership as chair, really co-chair of our Advocacy at Work task force. Michael McNally is the other chair of that group. Many of you are represented on this call as well. Business leaders across our community that advise us on ensuring that we understand business needs and concerns, and we represent and we're the unified voice for those to our local, state, and also federal delegations. So I commend this group for kicking off our legislative agenda setting process for 2022. So if you're on this call and you have a concern that you would like to raise for us to consider adding to our legislative agenda and our legislative priorities for 2022, please email me or Brian directly, and we'll include our contact information in the chat for you to be able to do that. But we'd love to hear from you. If you ever have an issue that arises and you need some additional kind of elevation and attention, we will be your voice and your advocate in order to work on your behalf. Last thing I want to mention, again, I appreciate your flexibility in order for us to accommodate the speaker's schedule. I also thank Jay for also pinch hitting for us and just adding so much value to this call. Thank you for your comments and your words. We plan to have a pretty robust schedule in our advocacy program this year. So again, thank you for your involvement and your engagement in advance. We also look forward to releasing our annual report in the coming month, so you can see all of our work on behalf of business and all of our strategic priorities, in addition to advocacy at work. Then our annual meeting is scheduled for February the 16th, so save the date there, and we look forward to being in person at the Hickory Metro Convention Center. But with that being said, I will pause in the event that you had an additional question or comment that you would like to ask of Representative Adams.
Well, I'd just like one comment. What you said is very true. It all began for me, it all began with the chamber. It all began there, State and Local Government Committee, and I've mentioned to you, the Transportation Committee. My interest in the 321 project is not, it's not something that's recent. I've been involved with that project since the mid-90s. And it's that understanding that has allowed me to help make that project better. It's going to be a very high impact project. And now with the App State project, it's going to become even more complicated. It started at the chamber. The chamber is terribly important to our community. So I just wanted to emphasize that, and I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Thank you. Thank you, Jay. Any final questions for Representative Adams before we sign off today? All right. Well, on behalf of your chamber, our board leadership, our Advocacy at Work task force, again, I want to thank you for your engagement. We have recorded this session, so we will send out a recording to all of those that were registered for this event. And stay tuned. If you haven't already registered for our Advocacy at Work updates, Brian sends and creates for us each Friday. Please let us know if you'd like to be included in those. He sends just a brief video on Fridays. However, We will not have another one sent until 2022. But if you'd like to be included on that, we would love to include you. Just shoot me a note. I included my contact information. Brian also included his contact information in the chat, and we'll be glad to engage you in that way. Well, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays to all of you, and we look forward to reconvening in 2022. Thank you so much for investing in your chamber.
Thank you.